right, so laden with this great burden of conviction, the Pilgrims set out for the Americas. Imagine yourself in a space about the size of a semi-truck trailer with 100 and some other people. So the tween decks that the Pilgrims were confined to for the greater part of the voyage were about 5 feet high, which meant that most of them would have had to stoop or sit for much of the voyage unless it got nice enough to go outside for a very brief amount of time and stand on the upper decks of the ship. Their food was salted dried meat, hard dry biscuits, and a gallon ration of beer per person. And if that sounds odd, it's because water was dangerous after a very short period on ships, and drinking it was a high risk of getting cholera, which was deadly within hours in many cases. So you had to drink beer. That, in general, this diet produced an incredible lack of nutrition, and malnutrition led to the very common condition of scurvy, which started out as painful and then ended up with open sores and tooth loss, and it was miserable. It was miserable to be on this ship. The voyage lasted longer than they thought it would. They were driven off course by terrible storms. As time went on, the relationships between the crew and the captain and the passengers got more strained, and even the passengers among themselves, because while the Pilgrims were there with conviction, not all of them were Pilgrims. Some of the other passengers on the ship were there for the romance and adventure and get rich quick. I can't say that. And so this quickly became a not so fun adventure for many of them. One woman gave birth, Elizabeth Hopkins, and she and her husband named their little boy Oceanus because he was born at sea. I can't imagine giving birth in these conditions. So very quickly, the whole unknown portion of understanding what this was going to be like became a very harsh reality. And about 66 days they spent sailing. They sighted land on November 9th. And I believe the reaction would have been characterized by both relief, because it meant sooner release from this dungeon of a ship they were on, but also some trepidation, because it wasn't the shores of home that they were looking at, and there was still a lot they had to face. I never feel comfortable complaining if I think about what these people went through to get to the New World.
2 days after the Pilgrims sighted land, November 11th, they signed the Mayflower Compact. Throughout history, the right to govern has been determined by war and conflict, and oftentimes this has resulted in slavery and oppression. Covenants, compacts, and constitutions are a means by which their intent is to deal with the sin of man. Man is a fallen creature, and covenants are treaties by which the sin of man is put in check. The Pilgrims realized that they were outside the bounds of the Virginia Charter, and some of the crew wished to take advantage of the lack of law and do unlawful and evil things. In light of this, the Pilgrims determined to draw up their own deed and to establish order and governance in their community. The Mayflower Compact stands as a unique and distinct act in history as the first time that men drew up terms of covenants together in self-government. It is important to recognize that the Mayflower Compact establishes a civil body politic. And this is important because it establishes the civil government as distinct from the church. The civil body was vested with the authority to frame just laws and enforce their obedience. All participants swore submission and obedience to the terms of the covenant. A forgotten and often suppressed aspect of the Mayflower Compact is its Christian character. The opening statement is a solemn oath to God, where it states, "In the name of God, Amen." The stated purpose of their journey to the New World was the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. The Pilgrim enterprise was not for vanity, nor to promote a self-made society resting on the wisdom of man. It was decidedly established and dedicated as a venture to establish a foothold in the American continent, wherein the propagation of the gospel could be effectively proclaimed among the lost.
And this covenantal approach applied not just to the Pilgrims and the people on the Mayflower themselves, but they applied it universally to those around them. It was a mindset of a social compact that you made with each individual that you encounter. So it applied also to the Indians as well. And so as whereas previous colonists and traders, especially in the Caribbean and in South America, had looked on the Indians as lesser beings and enslaved many and treated them inhumanely, the Pilgrims and most Englishmen, they looked upon the fellow human beings as image bearers of God and as their equals. So the Pilgrims understood that all men were created equal. They were created by God, and they were all descended from one man, Adam, and as such they were be treated with dignity, honor, and respect. And the colonists forged an agreement with Chief Massasoit of the Wampanoags that would protect the well-being of both the Indians and the settlers. And this is how we know that they had this mindset among them. And it was for the purpose of uniting the common goods of each of the parties. So they each promised to not injure each other, but instead to defend each other in time of need, and as well as there were various terms for extradition and restitution should anything happen between each other. So this treaty remained unbroken for over 50 years and shows that the true motives and the character of the Pilgrims, what they had towards the Native Americans.